What kind of manager tells a single mom to clock out mid-shift so she can rethink her attitude in front of customers? Yale Connors rubbed his jaw, staring at the printed complaint on his desk. It was the third one this month about the same store 7 out of the 9 he owned. A gas station and convenience store chain he'd bought 8 years ago back when it was falling apart. He'd built it up from the ground. Now it was stable, profitable, and supposedly staffed with people who cared. But something was off. Store 7 had higher turnover than the rest. More customer complaints. Late deliveries. And the last straw? A regular customer emailed corporate saying she saw a manager berate a young employee in front of a line of customers, then force her to clock out halfway through her shift. Yale had never personally met the staff at Store 7. It was a busy location near the highway, and since hiring district managers 3 years ago, he'd stepped back from day-to-day visits. He relied on reports. But now, reports weren't cutting it. He stood, pulled open the bottom drawer of his file cabinet, and grabbed the old black duffel he hadn't used in years. He threw in jeans, a windbreaker, and a pair of work boots. Then he opened the mirror on the wall behind his desk and clipped his beard shorter, darkened his hair with a rinse, and slid on his wire-rimmed glasses. When he looked at himself again, he didn't see the 46-year-old CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. He saw just another middle-aged guy down on his luck. He had a cover story ready. His name was Mike, and he was a temporary hire from a third-party staffing agency. He'd even had someone from HR set it up through a real agency. Paperwork was filed, the alias was clean, and no one at Store 7 had ever seen him in person. With 9 stores and dozens of new hires every month, he was just another face. 2 days later, Yale now Mike walked through the back door of Store 7 with a clipboard and a nervous smile. The first person he met was the assistant manager, Becky, who barely looked up from her phone. "You the temp?" she asked, chewing gum. "Yeah, Mike. Starting today." She didn't offer a handshake. "Cool. Just don't screw things up." "I'm not in the mood." Yale took in the break room. It was dirty. The fridge smelled. And there were old boxes stacked in the corner like no one had bothered to break them down for weeks. Becky waved a hand. "Go find Carl. He's your shift lead." He found Carl out front, stocking the fridge section. Carl looked tired and didn't say much beyond, "Grab a cart. Let's get the back room cleared." For the rest of the afternoon, Yale moved pallets, cleaned spills, and watched. The store was chaotic. The floor was sticky, shelves disorganized. Customers asked for help and got shrugs. Becky spent most of her time in the office scrolling her phone. Carl did his best, but he was clearly overworked. Around 6, a young woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Demi clocked in. She looked barely 20. Her shirt was a size too big and her apron still had a faint coffee stain on it. "Hey, Carl," she said, trying to smile. "I'm here." Carl nodded. "Just register 2 tonight." Becky's not working front. Demi didn't complain. She went straight to the counter, logged in, and started helping customers. Yale watched her move fast, polite to everyone, even when a man shouted at her for not scanning his lottery ticket right. "Sir," she said calmly, "I'm happy to check it again, but please don't raise your voice." The man grumbled and stormed off. Demi let out a breath and kept going. By 9, the line had slowed, and Yale was restocking gum when he heard Becky's voice from the office. "Demi, you left the coffee station a mess again." Yale looked. The coffee area was fine. A few empty cups in the trash, 1 sugar packet on the counter. Nothing major. "I cleaned it before I started," Demi said, walking over. "But I can check again. I don't have time for excuses. Clock out and come back when you know how to respect the store." Demi blinked. "It's only been 2 hours. Don't argue with me. Clock out. Now." Carl turned, mouth open, but didn't say anything. Yale stood frozen, watching the girl walk to the back room, head down. That night, after the store closed, Yale stayed late pretending to help Carl with inventory. Carl left around midnight. Becky had left hours earlier. As Yale packed the last box, he heard a soft knock at the glass door. A girl in uniform stood outside, holding a small backpack. It was Demi. He opened the door. Everything okay? She looked embarrassed. Sorry. I saw the lights. I left my phone behind earlier. I was gonna walk home but my ride bailed. It's cool if you're closing though. It's fine, Yale said. Come in and grab it. She stepped inside quickly, eyes flicking to the corners like she wasn't sure she was allowed. It's behind the counter, she said quietly. He retrieved it and handed it to her. Do you have a way home? She shook her head. I was gonna walk. It's only like 5 miles. 5? He asked, eyebrows rising. At midnight. I've done it before. I'm fine. But she didn't look fine. She looked exhausted. He hesitated. I'm heading that way. I can drop you. She looked at him for a long second. You sure? Yeah. Let me just lock up. They stepped into the night, and Yale led her to the beat-up sedan he'd rented for the disguise. On the drive, she talked a little. About school. Her younger brother. How she worked nights because her mom watched him during the day. How she didn't want to complain about Becky because people like me don't get to complain. Yale didn't say much, just listened. He dropped her off in front of a small apartment complex. She thanked him quietly and walked inside without looking back. He sat there for a moment, hands on the wheel, staring through the windshield. He knew what he had to do. Tomorrow he'd come back, and things were going to change. The next morning, Yale pulled into the lot at Store 7 just after 6. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the parking lot lights still hummed overhead, casting long, tired shadows on the cracked asphalt. A delivery truck idled near the back, and Carl was already outside, dragging a pallet jack across the loading zone. Yale stepped out of his car and offered a nod. Carl glanced over, gave a brief wave, and went back to work. No small talk, just tired eyes and quiet resolve. Whatever energy he had yesterday was already drained. Inside, Becky wasn't in yet. The morning cashier, a man in his early 50s named Lou, was counting singles at the register with short, efficient motions. He nodded once to Yale without speaking. The air smelled faintly of burnt toast and citrus cleaner, but the floor near the cooler was still sticky from the night before. Yale grabbed a broom and started sweeping near the front windows. He didn't mind the work. What he minded was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, this was the kind that settled in when people stopped expecting things to improve. Demi arrived not long after 7. She didn't look surprised to see him. Hey, she said as she tied her apron. You make it home okay? Yeah, Yale said. Thanks for helping me out last night. She shrugged. You helped me more. Yale watched as she moved behind the counter and started prepping the coffee station. She didn't ask if it was her job. She just did it. Her movements were quick, but there was no ease in them. Every task looked like something she was used to doing under pressure. 30 minutes in, Becky arrived, sunglasses on, cup of iced coffee in hand, and let the door slam behind her. She didn't acknowledge anyone as she passed the counter. Just headed straight to the office and shut the door. Carl came in shortly after, rubbing his temples. He handed Yale a clipboard with a list of stock that needed to be rotated in the back room. Becky said we're behind on inventory, he muttered. Again. Want me to help with it now? Yale asked. Carl hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. Start with the drinks. Half the dates are wrong in the system. Yale took the clipboard and headed to the back. He passed open boxes, half-unloaded pallets, and a large bin overflowing with flattened cardboard. The storage shelves were a mess, items stacked haphazardly with some inventory still wrapped in plastic. He'd seen this kind of disorganization before, usually in places where turnover was high and supervision was low. He was halfway through sorting the energy drinks when he heard raised voices from the front. No, I'm not calling anyone. You're over your limit. I'm not selling it to you. It was Demi. Firm, louder than he'd heard her speak before. Then a man's voice followed, harsh and slurred. You think I care what some girl with gas station pay thinks? Ring it up. Yale stepped out from the back. A man in a heavy coat stood at the counter, leaning over it, his face flushed. His speech was loud and uneven, and he reeked of vodka masked poorly by mint gum. Demi stood her ground, arms tense at her sides. "I already told you," she said. "You're cut off. Please leave." Becky stepped out of the office then, eyes still half-glazed, and took in the scene with a slow blink. "What's going on?" she asked, voice flat. "This guy's intoxicated," Demi said. "He's trying to buy more." The man turned to Becky. "You're the manager, right? Fire her." Becky looked at Demi, then at the man. "Just give him the bottle. It's not worth the headache." Yale's jaw tensed. He stepped forward before he could stop himself. "She's doing the right thing," he said. "He shouldn't be served." Becky narrowed her eyes. "Did I ask you?" The man shoved the bottle across the counter and stormed out, muttering. The door slammed, silence filling the space he left. Demi looked down and started organizing the register drawer like nothing happened. Becky turned to her. "Next time, just call me. Don't escalate things." Demi didn't respond. She just nodded once and kept her eyes on the drawer. Yale turned back to the stockroom, his stomach tight. He finished the inventory in silence, then helped Carl with the freezer restock. Carl didn't say much beyond short instructions. There was a heaviness to him that went beyond being tired. It was the weight of someone who'd stopped expecting support from above. Later that afternoon, a younger employee named Ricky came in for his shift. He looked barely out of high school and wore headphones around his neck. As he clocked in, Becky handed him a mop and pointed to the bathroom. "Someone trashed the men's room again. You know the drill." He didn't argue, just took the mop and disappeared. Yale waited until Becky went to the back again, then approached Carl near the cooler. "Does that happen a lot?" "The bathroom thing." Carl gave a tired half-laugh. "Every other day. We don't have a janitor anymore." Becky said it's not in the budget. Yale nodded slowly. "And the inventory stuff. Do you ever get help?" "Not really. It's me or whoever she thinks won't screw it up." He glanced at Yale. "You're her flavor of the week, so enjoy it while it lasts." Yale tried to keep his tone neutral. "What happens if it doesn't get done?" Carl shrugged. "She lies on the reports. Then corporate thinks everything's fine." Yale nodded once and didn't press further. That evening, Demi was scheduled to leave at 6, but she stayed after her shift. Not for extra pay. Becky had already logged her out on the system. She stayed because Ricky couldn't get the mop bucket to drain and the bathroom stank of bleach and something worse. She rolled up her sleeves and helped him fix the drain valve, even though Becky had disappeared again. "You don't have to do this," Yale said quietly as he passed her in the hallway. She looked up. "Neither do you." There wasn't bitterness in her voice, just quiet resignation. By 8, Yale was back behind the counter, helping Lou scan the last of the late rush. Demi was wiping down the soda machine, still off the clock. Becky hadn't returned from her break since 7. Outside, the wind had picked up, rattling the loose metal above the awning. A young man with a flat tire pulled into the lot, his hazard lights flashing. He looked around, clearly unsure of what to do next. Yale watched as Demi stepped outside without hesitation. She talked to the driver for a minute, then came back in. "His jack's broken," she said. "Do we still have that old one in the supply closet?" Lou gestured toward the back without looking up. "If the rats didn't eat it." Yale followed her to the back. They found the jack wedged behind a box of windshield wiper fluid. The crank was rusted, but it moved. "You don't have to help him," Yale said. Demi shrugged. He looked scared. "I've been there." They went outside together. The driver was maybe 18, hands trembling as he tried to loosen the lug nuts. Demi knelt beside him and showed him how to brace the wrench with his foot. It took 20 minutes, but the tire was changed. When it was done, the kid thanked her 3 times before driving off. Yale watched her wipe her hands on a rag and stretch her back. "You ever think about doing something else?" he asked. Demi looked at him, then up at the flickering sign above the store. "Every day," she said. He nodded, then handed her a bottled water from the cooler inside. "Thanks," she said. Yale watched her walk back toward the store, her steps slow but steady. And in that moment, he knew. Tomorrow, he wasn't coming in as Mike anymore. He was coming in as himself. At precisely 10:40 the next morning, Yale stepped out of his rental car wearing a pressed navy shirt, clean slacks, and polished leather shoes instead of the work boots and windbreaker from the last 2 days. The disguise was gone. No more wire rim glasses, no more clipped beard. The man walking across the parking lot now looked every bit the owner of the company measured, alert, and no longer silent. Inside Store 7, the early lunch crowd had begun to trickle in. The register beeped steadily, the overhead lights buzzed, and the same faint smell of overripe bananas and floor cleaner hung in the air. Demi stood behind the counter again, her hair pulled back tighter than yesterday, her sleeves rolled up, calmly bagging a customer's items while answering a question about the lottery machine. Yale walked straight toward the counter. She glanced at him, recognition flickering across her face, but she didn't say anything right away. He waited until the last customer left, then leaned slightly forward. "My name's Yale Connors," he said. "I own this store." Demi's hands stopped mid-motion. She stared at him for a long second, her expression unreadable, then slowly set the receipt on the counter. "You're not with the staffing agency." "No," he said. "I needed to see what was happening here for myself." She looked around as if expecting someone to jump out and say it was a prank. When that didn't happen, she took a step back from the counter. Did I do something wrong?" "Not at all," he said. "You did more right than you know." Before she could reply, Becky's voice sliced through the air from the back hallway. "Who left the back door open again? I swear." She froze as she entered the front area and saw Yale standing near the counter. He turned his head slowly. Their eyes met. "I need to speak with you," Yale said. Becky blinked. About what?" Yale didn't answer. He simply walked past the register toward the back office. Becky hesitated, then followed, silent for once. Inside the office, the door clicked shut behind them. The room was dim, the blinds on the small window drawn halfway. Papers were scattered across the desk, and a dried coffee ring marked the edge of a clipboard filled with scheduling sheets. Yale took a breath and turned to face her. "I've been undercover here for the past 2 days. I've seen how you run this store." Becky stiffened. "I didn't know corporate was doing that kind of thing." "We weren't. I did this on my own." She crossed her arms. "If this is about inventory, I sent the reports on time. This is about the way you treat people," he said, cutting her off. "And the way you've misrepresented the store's condition to everyone above you." Her jaw tightened. "I've been running this place short-staffed for months. You think that's easy?" Yale kept his voice steady. "Short-staffed doesn't explain why you berated an employee in front of customers. Or why you let someone clean biohazards in the bathroom without safety equipment. Or why you sit in the office while someone off the clock handles customer complaints." Becky shifted her weight. "You don't know what it's like to be stuck in this dump with half-trained kids and no help." "That's exactly why I came down here," he said. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "You're being reassigned," Yale said. "Effective immediately. You won't be returning to this location." Her arms dropped to her sides. "You're firing me? You'll get a formal notice by the end of the day. HR will contact you about transition details." Becky didn't argue. She just nodded once, tightly, and brushed past him to the door. Yale waited until she was gone before stepping out into the store again. Carl had just clocked in, walking through the side entrance. He paused mid-step when he saw Yale by the register, dressed like he belonged at a board meeting, not in a storeroom. "You're Carl," began. "Yale," he said. "The owner." Carl let out a slow breath. "Guess that explains a lot." "I'd like to speak with you," Yale said. "In the office." They walked back together. Once inside, Yale gestured toward the single chair across from the desk. "I've been watching how you handle things," Yale said. "You're overworked, and you've been left with no real support." Carl leaned forward slightly. "I didn't think anyone noticed." "I noticed. You've been doing the work of 2 people. Probably more. I've tried to keep the place moving, but it's been hard. People quit every week." Becky didn't train replacements, she just tossed new hires into the fire. Yale nodded. "That ends now." Carl tilted his head. "What do you mean?" "You're being promoted," Yale said. "Acting store manager, starting today. Full salary increase. You'll also get an assistant manager to help with training and scheduling. But I need your help rebuilding things here, proper onboarding, clear systems. You in? Carl didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands, then back up. Yeah, he said. I'm in. They shook hands. When they stepped back into the store, Demi was still behind the counter, ringing up a customer. She glanced at Carl, then at Yale, her expression unsure. Yale walked over and waited until the customer left. I'd like a few minutes with you too, if that's all right. She gave a cautious nod and followed him to the office. Carl remained out front. Once inside, Yale didn't sit. I owe you more than a thank you, he said. You handled yourself with composure when no one else stepped up. You stayed late to help someone you thought was just another customer. You handled a hostile situation calmly and professionally. You've shown more leadership than some people 3 levels above you. Demi looked down. I'm just trying to keep my job. You've done more than that. And I want to offer you something. She looked up, unsure. We're creating a senior cashier role here, he said. It comes with a raise and consistent hours. You'll help train new hires, be involved in team decisions, and I'll make sure you have the resources to do it right. It's not a huge jump, but it's a step. One that reflects what you've already been doing without the title. She blinked. Why me? Because I've seen how you work under pressure. You don't wait to be told what's right, you just do it. That's rare. She didn't answer right away. Then finally, okay. I'll do it. Yale smiled faintly. Good. You'll get used to saying no when things aren't right, just like you did yesterday. Only now you'll have the authority to back it up. When they returned to the front, Ricky had just arrived for his shift, earbuds still around his neck. Carl was handing him a revised schedule printout. Demi's the new senior here, Carl said, tapping the sheet. You'll be training with her. Ricky raised an eyebrow. For real? For real, Yale said. And Carl's the new manager. Ricky glanced between them. Things changing that fast? They're changing permanently, Yale said. That afternoon, Yale stayed on site. He walked through the back room with Carl and made a list of what needed to be reordered, replaced, or thrown out. He called corporate to approve a deep cleaning service to reset the store's sanitation standards. HR sent over a short-term assistant manager candidate to start shadowing. By 2 o'clock, a technician was already fixing the broken lock on the storage cage and inspecting the security cameras. Demi stayed an extra hour off the clock again, but this time it was because she wanted to help Carl get the supply closet sorted. As she left, Yale caught her near the front door. You're not walking, are you? No, she said. A friend's picking me up. He nodded. Good. Still here? He handed her a prepaid rideshare gift card. For the days when plans fall through. She hesitated, then took it carefully. Thanks. Yale looked around the store one last time. It wasn't fixed. Not yet. But the silence had shifted. The staff were talking to each other more. The register area was cleaner. People were finally looking up when customers walked in. He stepped outside, the sun now sitting lower in the sky, and let the door close behind him. Tomorrow he'd be back not as Mike. Not as a stranger, but as the owner who'd finally seen what was happening on the ground. And this time he wasn't going to stop watching. Yale pulled into the Store 7 lot 3 days later at 6:45 in the morning. His sedan was parked in the far corner, away from the usual staff spots. The lot had already begun to fill, not with customers yet, but with employees clocking in for the early shift. A light drizzle tapped against the windshield as he shut the car off and sat for a moment, watching. Through the glass storefront, he could see Carl moving along the center aisle, clipboard in hand, checking shelf tags. There was a different energy to the space, now not fixed, not yet smooth, but the tension that once clung to the air like mildew had begun to lift. The music overhead played at a moderate volume, and someone had wiped the condensation from the inside of the windows. Inside, the register beeped steadily. Demi stood behind it, her new name tag clipped neatly onto a fresh apron. She was reviewing a set of laminated training guides with a new hire, tall, nervous-looking, probably no older than 19. Her voice was calm, her instructions clear. She didn't glance over when Yale entered, but she must have noticed him because she continued speaking without hesitation. These buttons here are for age-restricted items. You'll have to scan your ID badge before the system lets you complete the sale. If you get stuck, you call me, not Carl. He's usually tied up during the afternoon truck. Yale stepped to the side, out of the way, and waited. By 7:15, Carl emerged from the back carrying a box of shelf hooks, nodding once when he saw Yale. "Office?" Carl asked. Yale followed him through the back hallway. The door to the office now bore a small paper sign taped above the knob, "Manager on duty, do not enter without knocking." Inside, the desk had been cleared of clutter. The scheduling binder was color-coded and neatly labeled. A fresh air filter hummed quietly in the ceiling vent. Carl pulled the door shut and sat down. "She's taken to the new role fast," he said. "I barely had to explain anything." She caught half the errors in the training binder and rewrote the shift cheat sheet herself. Yale nodded. "She's good with people. Better than most I've seen." Carl leaned forward. "You sure this isn't too much for her? I mean, she's still juggling school and home. I checked with her before offering it. She set her own limits, 4 shifts per week, no more overtime unless she volunteers. She's not stretching herself. She's just finally in a place where the effort's worth it." Carl leaned back, silent for a moment. "I didn't think it'd feel different this fast. The job's still rough. We're still short 2 people. But it feels possible now." Yale didn't speak right away. He watched the movement of the blinds, the way the morning light filtered through the slats and landed on the edge of the desk. "She said something to me the night we changed that tire," he finally said. "She said, people like me don't get to complain." Carl looked up. "That's why I came back. Because no one in this building should have to believe that." Carl gave a slow nod. "Let's make sure they don't." By 8, the store had fallen into its usual rhythm. The regulars came in, the contractor with the thermos of black coffee, the nurse grabbing a protein bar and a scratch ticket, the delivery driver who always asked for exact change. Demi handled the register while the new trainee shadowed her. Carl moved between the aisles with a clipboard, checking shelf heights and facing product. Yale stayed out of the way, observing. Near 9, a woman entered with a clipboard and a bright orange lanyard. She introduced herself to Carl as Marcy, the facilities coordinator from corporate, and began inspecting the back room for safety compliance. She took photos of the emergency exit signage, checked the fire extinguisher dates, and noted the cracked tile near the mop sink. Yale had requested the visit days earlier quietly without alerting the store, but Carl handled it with calm efficiency. At 10:45, Demi finally stepped into the break room and dropped into the plastic chair near the lockers. She pulled a granola bar from her bag and leaned back with a sigh. Yale knocked on the frame of the open door. "You've got 5 minutes left. I'll make it quick." She sat up straighter. "Everything okay?" "Better than okay." "I came to ask you something." She raised an eyebrow. "I'm starting a pilot program," Yale said. "It's small, just 2 stores to start. We're building a staff advisory panel. 1 employee from each store, not management. They'll meet quarterly and give feedback directly to me." She blinked. "Like a council. Not formal. Just a voice. Someone who sees things we miss. Someone who's not afraid to speak up." She hesitated. "You want me to do it?" "I'd like you to consider it. You've earned the right to be heard. And more than that, I trust your judgment." She thought for a long moment. "Then, would I still be able to work my normal hours?" "Yes. Meetings are virtual. 1 Saturday a quarter. We'll pay you for it." She gave a small nod. "All right. I'm in." Yale stepped back. "I'll have HR follow up with the details." As he turned to leave, she called out quietly, "Thank you for seeing us." He looked back. "Thank you for staying when it was hard." She nodded once, then stood and returned to the floor. By noon, the energy in the store had settled into something that felt sustainable. The new hire had taken over Register 2, with Demi watching from a few feet away. Carl was in the back, updating the inventory system. The store no longer felt like it was barely holding together, it felt like it was finding its footing. Yale stood outside for a moment before heading to his car. He glanced back at the building, at the flickering sign above the awning that would finally be replaced next week. Rain had stopped and the sky had begun to clear. He slid into the driver's seat and pulled the door shut behind him. The engine turned over with a low rumble. In the rearview mirror, he saw Demi step outside to wipe down the window glass. She moved with the same steady purpose she'd had that first night, but now, it came from a place of ownership, not survival. As he pulled out of the lot, he didn't feel triumphant. Just steady, grounded, reconnected. He hadn't saved the store. That wasn't the story. The people inside had saved it themselves. All he'd done was finally listen.